The echoes of mystery can be louder than a teenager's scream in a horror movie. But Antarctica, the frozen continent at the edge of the world, has always been a mystery in itself. Why are people so obsessed with this place? Perhaps because it is nearly untouchable, and also one of the very few unexplored regions left on Earth. Buried deep within are magnetic anomalies, hidden beneath miles of snow along with mountain ranges shaped suspiciously like pyramids. For decades, this icy land has been regarded as the planet's final frontier. And now, for the first time, it seems that some kind of species may have been discovered here, hinting at the possibility that Antarctica was once ruled by supernatural beings. Let's take a closer look at what exactly has been found, and how it might change the history of humanity. The story of the frozen giants of Antarctica begins with Admiral Richard E. Byrd, a daring explorer assigned by the U.S. government to lead expeditions to the polar regions. Byrd was a pioneering aviator, the first to fly an airplane to the North Pole. He became a symbol of polar exploration and a national hero. In 1929, he went on to become the first person to fly over Antarctica, and later even funded his own private journeys to the continent. His fame spread, and his military career advanced rapidly. In 1946, as part of the top-secret Operation High Jump, Byrd led 4,000 troops, 13 ships, and a small fleet of aircraft to Antarctica. The official story was that they went to test cold weather equipment and to assert America's presence there. But if it was only about testing equipment, why bring along a force large enough to start a war in the polar regions? 4,000 soldiers is not a small number. Another theory suggests they went to search for alien technology, Nazi technology, or perhaps a fusion of the two. In short, anything strange, glowing, and not of this Earth. It is also worth noting that Operation High Jump took place right before the Roswell incident of 1947, when many believed a UFO crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. And here's where the story becomes unbelievable. After the mission, Byrd was said to have warned of a new enemy capable of attacking from the poles at terrifying speed. Was he hinting at the Soviet Union with their powered sled dogs, or was he truly talking about flying saucers? Did the US military go to Antarctica to retrieve the bodies of frozen giants? That's exactly what conspiracy theorists believe, even though no evidence exists beyond rumor. There are also whispers of a secret diary written by Byrd himself. The problem is, no one has ever seen it, so its authenticity remains unknown. Byrd certainly kept diaries and official records, and he even wrote the famous book Alone. He never hid his habit of keeping notes, but the rumor points to another diary, a hidden one, allegedly found by his son, the mother of a friend, or some vague relative no one can quite identify. In this secret diary, Byrd supposedly described a lost civilization, an entrance to a hollow Earth, and giant beings warning humanity of destruction if we continued to ravage the planet. He even wrote about bizarre discoveries in Antarctica, technology on par with Star Trek, spacecraft buried in ice, and the remains of humans of unimaginable height. Of course, there is no proof that this diary exists, but the rumors persist that giants are trapped in the ice. Scientists have never found them, but they have uncovered giant bones of prehistoric predators, from terror birds to massive flying reptiles no one would want to encounter. Just imagine getting lost in a blizzard and suddenly seeing a gigantic bone protruding from the ice. That alone would be enough to make anyone shiver. Another rumor claims that Antarctica is haunted by the Ningen, a giant humanoid creature with pale skin and enormous eyes. Perhaps it is only waiting for unwary travelers to wander too close. There are even claims that scientists discovered tombs of giants hidden beneath the ice. This conspiracy theory suggests that Antarctica holds the secret of a lost civilization tied to giants and their buried graves, deliberately kept from the public by world governments. I have not found any concrete evidence to support these tales, but they clearly serve as powerful inspiration for writers building fictional worlds or creating new science fiction sagas. There are so many theories swirling around Antarctica that simply trying to organize them all is enough to leave your head spinning. A doomed voyage and the captain's final words chilling enough to pierce the bone. The story you're about to hear may be the most haunting maritime legend ever told. In the merciless cold of Antarctica, where the winds howl as if trying to drive humanity away, it is said that a ship still lies trapped in the ice. A sailing vessel called Jenny, swallowed by the Drake Passage and preserved in frozen eternity like a haunted popsicle. This is the legend of the ghost ship Jenny, last seen in 1840. Jenny was a small schooner that vanished in 1823, disappearing into the furious seas off the southern tip of South America. Nearly 2 decades passed with no word, no wreckage, no survivors, just another casualty of the ocean. But in 1840, everything turned icy in the truest sense. The British whaling ship Hope, while crossing the Drake Passage, a notoriously savage stretch of water between South America and Antarctica, spotted a drifting vessel pressed against a wall of ice. weathered and worn, yet strangely intact. As they drew closer, the crew of the Hope saw 7 figures standing motionless on the deck of the mysterious ship. At first, they thought it was a disciplined crew awaiting orders. But the closer they came, the more horrifying the truth became. Those figures were not alive. They had been frozen solid, like statues of ice in the Antarctic winds. Captain Brighton of the Hope was the first to set foot on deck. Inside the cabin, he found Jenny's captain sitting motionless at his desk, pen still in hand as if frozen mid-sentence. The final entry in his logbook read, May 4th, 1823, no food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. And there he remained, perfectly preserved in death. They say even the ink on the page had not yet dried, as though time itself had stopped. Beside him lay the body of his wife, the family dog, and the entire crew. Some claim the sailors of the Hope buried Jenny's dead at sea. Others insist they left everything as it was, taking only the captain's logbook, the sole artifact of this ghostly voyage. So what do you think? Was this a true event, or just a maritime legend? The story of Jenny first appeared in the German geography magazine, Globus, told by an anonymous sailor from the Hope. The details were vague, the locations uncertain, and the origins dubious. There are no official naval records of Jenny, no corroborating logs, no evidence that it ever existed beyond the tale. But would you really expect a ghost ship to leave behind proper paperwork? Whether it was a hoax, a metaphor, or a lost chapter in maritime history, the legend of Jenny still endures. Because it is not only about death, it is about being forgotten in the farthest place on Earth. Few fates are more terrifying than slowly becoming a human popsicle aboard a vanished ship in the Antarctic seas. Aliens are in your DNA, they live in your blood, and they've been there for a very long time. Non-human fragments of DNA have been discovered in the human genome. You might be more like ET than you realize. Let's talk about the human genome. This is your own Bible, the blueprint that defines who you are at the genetic level. Picture the genome as a detailed map of every atom that makes up your body and mind. And within that double helix, hidden between the sequences that decide your eye color or body shape, lies a cache of strange DNA, like uninvited guests tucked into your code. 19 brand new strands of non-human DNA have been identified, tightly wound into the human genome like glitter after a music festival. These add to the fragments of ancient viruses that science had already cataloged. In total, about 8% of your DNA is actually the residue of ancient viruses that once infected our ancestors and stayed forever, like squatters who moved in and never left. What's more unsettling is that some scientists suspect they may not be mere viruses at all. A few suggest these non-human fragments could be connected to extraterrestrials. This discovery stems from a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, where scientists analyzed the genomes of 2,500 people around the world. They compared each sequence against a reference, like a DNA bingo card, circling the traces of viral activity hidden within. The results: they found 19 HERVs, human endogenous retroviruses, still lurking in our DNA. These are faint echoes of viruses that infected early humans hundreds of thousands of years ago and left permanent scars in our genes. One of them is even a complete provirus, meaning it contains the full genetic instructions to function as a real, living virus. Among the 2,500 people studied, about 2% carried this provirus in their DNA. Virologist John Coffin of Tufts University warned that it looked capable of reactivating into an infectious virus. If true, it could be a time-traveling virus, lying in wait to re-emerge and cause disaster. Before you start panicking and looking for a way to erase DNA, take a breath. Not all viral leftovers are harmful. In fact, some have been domesticated by the body and repurposed as part of our biology. Here's the key point. Only about 1.5% of our DNA is uniquely human. The rest resembles that of chimpanzees and ancient viruses. Some scientists even speculate that human DNA carries tiny fragments of alien life, or that humanity itself began from cosmic genes that fell to Earth billions of years ago. Hundreds of religions have risen and fallen throughout history. But what was the very first religion? Roughly 35,000 years ago, in the dark recess of a cave in Galilee, Judea, a group of prehistoric people gathered, not to hunt, cook, or argue about who broke the flint knife again. They gathered to create what is now considered the first religion known to humanity. This happened long before today's major faiths came into being. These early humans entered a chamber drenched in darkness and silence, where a carving marked the stone. By torchlight, they saw a glowing image of a turtle shell. This was the Minot Cave. A recent discovery inside has overturned everything we thought we knew about spiritual life in the Paleolithic era. Minot Cave is now regarded as the earliest known site of communal ritual in the Levant, and perhaps the oldest house of worship on Earth. Welcome to humanity's very first church basement, or more accurately, the first temple. No incense, no pews, only a sacred chamber echoing in the dark. guarded by towering stalactites like stone sentinels. Near the entrance, archaeologists found flint tools, butchered animal bones, and the ashes of hearth fires, familiar traces of a primitive dwelling. But deeper inside, scientists uncovered what looked very much like an altar. At the back of the cave stood a massive block of dolomite, carved to resemble a turtle shell, placed as a prehistoric altar. According to archaeologist Dr. Omar Barzilai and his team, the turtle shell motif was symbolic, ritualistic, and highly intentional. The true meaning remains a mystery, as these people left no written words. Still, Dr. Barzilai theorized that the carvings might have represented a totem, a sacred entity, or a mythological being, something beyond the material world, imagined and worshipped. In the flickering firelight, it might even have seemed alive. Gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? Experts are unsure how exactly religion began in this cave, but sound may have played a role. Professor Hershkovitz noted that the chamber's acoustics amplified voices, making it perfect for chanting, singing, and storytelling. This was not just worship, it was a spiritual concert tens of thousands of years before Woodstock. Perhaps a prehistoric priest led the group inside, using the cave's natural echo to transform his voice into the booming command of gods or spirits. The experience must have been overwhelming. Not far from the turtle shell altar, researchers also discovered a pair of intact deer antlers, carefully placed in a side chamber like sacred relics. Why antlers? For late Stone Age people, antlers were tools, symbols, and possibly even holy objects. It's possible that humanity's first religion revolved around a deer god, or at least a powerful creature with towering antlers. This discovery is astonishing because it shows that ritual behavior had developed worldwide as far back as 35,000 years ago. Small human groups, from Europe to the Middle East, seemed to tune into the same spiritual frequency all at once. But what triggered it? However, many turtle shell altars are unearthed. Scientists doubt they will ever truly know what first gave birth to religion back in a time when humans had not even mastered complete language. Let's name 3 events that happened in 1888. The first thing that probably comes to mind is the string of murders committed by Jack the Ripper in London. But 1888 was also the year of the Great Blizzard that devastated America, claiming countless lives and spreading chaos everywhere. And it was the year the National Geographic Society was founded. Amid all this, in the sweltering rainforests of Java, something else quietly unfolded. A Dutch mining engineer named B.D. van Rietschoten stumbled upon a human skull, and like any bearded European gentleman of the 19th century, he did the most dramatic thing possible. He shipped the mysterious skull to Europe for a paleontologist, believing he had uncovered a relic of enormous importance. The recipient was Eugene Dubois. He determined it belonged to an entirely new human species and named it Wajak Man. Dubois treated it as if he had just discovered the fabled missing link. He even traveled to Asia himself in 1890 and found another skull. For years afterward, scientists around the globe believed this was a new species, calling it Homo wajakensis, possibly a subspecies of Homo erectus. The 19th century exploded with excitement. But then came the 20th century, and science grew stricter. For the first time, the skulls were carefully re-examined. That's when the truth came out. They were anatomically modern humans, living in the early to mid-Holocene, about 12,000 years ago. Still, even that conclusion was wrong. In 2013, a new study revealed that the skulls were actually closer to 37,000 years old. Ancient indeed, but not the missing link. It took more than a century for scientists to realize these skulls belonged simply to ancient Javanese people with unusually robust jaws. It's a perfect reminder that science doesn't always get it right the first time. The hype train may roar down the tracks, but it doesn't always arrive at the right station. Burning. In a place where the air usually carries the scent of fresh snow and hot springs, Iceland's quiet Reykjanes Peninsula has completely transformed. On April 1st, April Fool's Day, no less a massive fissure ripped open near Grindavik, spewing a violent stream of lava into the icy landscape as if torn from a fantasy battlefield. But this time, it wasn't CGI. It was real. It was brutal. And it was far too close for comfort. Here, fire didn't just meet ice. It slapped ice in the face. Most people think of Iceland as a frozen land of fjords and Viking history, but it is also a land of furious fire. Remember the eruption of 2023, which forced the evacuation of Grindavik, leaving scenes of houses swallowed in molten rock? That was the very volcano that had slept for 8 centuries, silent since the Middle Ages, until it roared back to life in 2023. And now, it has erupted again. For 800 years, the volcano lay dormant. Tourists, soaking in the Blue Lagoon, paying to float in the warm, milky blue water amid the lava fields, suddenly had to run for their lives. Imagine this. One moment you're sipping a smoothie in a spa, the next you're sprinting from a fire-spewing fissure like a dragon with indigestion. At 10 in the morning, alarms blared as lava surged toward the protective walls around town. But the volcano didn't care. Whoever thought you could stop an angry volcano after 8 centuries of silence? According to Iceland's civil defense chief, the magma tunnel beneath the surface may be far larger than anything seen recently, and the situation is only getting worse. This was already the 11th eruption since the volcano woke up. Geologists call it Iceland's new volcanic era. What does this mean for your future trip to the land of ice and fire? The Blue Lagoon is closed indefinitely. Grindavik faces the threat of being consumed. The ground itself is tearing apart like an overstretched lava sweater. Authorities beg locals and tourists to stay away, but everyone knows the dangerous pull it has on Instagram thrill seekers. Still, this is an apocalypse snowball you absolutely don't need a selfie with. Let the drones handle it. If the volcano truly has entered a new age, Iceland may become uninhabitable. The entire island could transform into a Mount Doom. For now, international travel is safe. Keflavik Airport, just a volcanic burp away, remains open. No ash clouds yet, but history has already shown us what can happen. Remember 2010? If you plan to fly to Iceland, you'd better pack an escape plan. According to ancient astronaut theorists, the Maya, like many other ancient civilizations, seem to possess advanced knowledge of math and science that supposedly came from the gods. How could their understanding have been so far ahead of its time? The answer, some argue, is that ancient astronauts once descended to Earth. In 2011, a Mexican government official announced that a new documentary and a collection of recently declassified artifacts would soon prove that the Maya had contact with extraterrestrials. Raul Julia Levy, producer of Revelations of the Mayans 2012 and beyond, told Reuters that the Mexican government would release codices, artifacts, and critical documents supporting this claim. According to a press release from Luis Augusto Garcia, Campeche's Minister of Tourism, these items were being kept in secure underground vaults. He even spoke of 3,000-year-old spacecraft landing pads hidden in the jungles of Central America. Julia Levy insisted that for thousands of years, the Maya had been planning to dominate the planet. But then, uninvited visitors from another world appeared and left behind traces of their presence. The filmmakers promised evidence, but to this day, that promise has yet to be fulfilled. Picture this. You're crawling through a pitch-black cave nearly a mile underground. Your flashlight flickers, your knees are scraped, your heart pounding. You're not searching for treasure, and you're not dodging booby traps like Indiana Jones. You're looking for signs, dots, dashes, crude scratches. Why? Because these tiny marks may be humanity's oldest form of communication, and they're about to rewrite everything we thought we knew about human history. Welcome to the conspiracy of primitive emojis. Leading this investigation is Genevieve von Petzinger, a paleoanthropologist and full-time cave explorer. Back in 2007, while most of us were busy arguing on Facebook and posting blurry photos, Genevieve had a hunch. She believed the strange markings found alongside cave art weren't just idle doodles. They could mean something much bigger. Most people know cave art for its majestic mammoths, stick figure hunters, and occasionally fiery alien-like shapes. But around those images were always geometric symbols, and Genevieve noticed something crucial. No one had ever cataloged them all, not once. So, she made it her mission to record every symbol in Europe's Ice Age caves. The results were staggering, rewriting 40,000 years of human expression. Alongside her husband Dylan, Genevieve traveled like a prehistoric detective, exploring forgotten caves in France, Spain, Portugal, and Sicily. In 75% of the caves they studied, they discovered symbols that had never been recorded before. That's an astonishing number. Imagine walking into an ancient library and realizing the alphabet doesn't stop at Z. Across all these sites, Genevieve identified 32 recurring symbols. They appeared not only across vast distances, but also across tens of thousands of years. She believes these 32 signs represent a distinct system of communication, a prehistoric written language. And when she expanded her research beyond Europe, the mystery deepened. The very same symbols appeared in Indonesia, Australia, and North America. It was as if humanity once subscribed to a global newsletter. Genevieve argues that these signs trace back to Africa, the cradle of humanity. Her theory is simple. Before writing, there were symbols. Before emojis, our ancestors were sketching dots and squiggles on cave walls, and you needed to know the code to understand them. This may be tangible evidence of a global connection predating every known civilization. Humanity once shared a common language, a mystery that challenges history itself. Hidden deep in the wilds of southern Siberia, where bears outnumber tourists 10 to 1, lies a secret powerful enough to rattle history books and send archaeologists into a cold sweat. Rising from the Shoria Mountains, far beyond the reach of civilization, are colossal blocks of granite, cut with precision and stacked like God's own game of Jenga. These megaliths may be the gift of a lost civilization or the most suspicious natural formation since crop circles started leaving phone numbers in wheat fields. Welcome to Gornaya Shoria, home of giant stones that no one can explain and few dare to explore. Here, wall after wall is built from granite blocks weighing up to 3,000 tons, cut with surgical precision, stacked 140 feet high, and fitted at perfect 90-degree angles that would put a carpenter's square to shame. This is Gornaya Shoria, a Cyclopean-style wall in the middle of Russia's wilderness. But who built it? The blocks were first documented during a 2013 survey led by Georgy Sidorov. Granite is among the hardest materials known to humans, not exactly clay. Shaping it requires immense power and advanced tools, far beyond what ancient people were thought to possess. In the 1990s, geologists suggested it was simply erosion, but that explanation feels flat. Many believe these blocks could not have been cut with primitive tools. That leaves two options. Either they were created with advanced tools from a vanished civilization, or they are the product of millions of years of natural weathering. Which door would you choose? Alternative historians refuse to accept erosion. The symmetry, the flat surfaces, the geometry, all scream deliberate design. Sidorov's team even suggested that Gornaya Shoria could be evidence of an advanced civilization lost to time, older than the wheel, older than Stonehenge, perhaps even beyond the wildest alien theories. This place feels more like an ancient Petra than an accident of nature. Some estimate the stones could be 100,000 years old. Stranger still, the survey team found signs of catastrophic burning. Scorched granite, shattered walls, fragments blasted more than 1,500 feet away. What could have caused this? A volcano, an earthquake, or a misfiring ancient technology? Maybe the very tools that built it also destroyed it. Some blocks even carry negative magnetism, sending compasses spinning like they're dodging an awkward conversation. The magnetic field here is completely scrambled, and just when you think Gornaya Shoria can't get any stranger, Sidorov's team discovered a narrow shaft lined with parallel stone slabs, plunging more than 130 feet down before opening into a hall 36 meters high. The stones were cut perfectly, some like support columns, fitted so tightly they resembled the masonry of the Great Pyramid or Machu Picchu. It was like uncovering a prehistoric skyscraper buried inside a mountain. Was it a temple, a factory, a seismic power station, or even a cosmic garage for ancient UFOs? Some researchers even speculate it was an energy generator, harnessing forces modern science still doesn't understand. Why haven't you heard more about this place? According to researchers, lack of funding is partly to blame. Russian institutes often face corruption and limited resources, leaving groundbreaking finds like this ignored, misinterpreted, or left to gather moss. Others suggest world powers prefer to keep the truth buried, because Gornaya Shoria isn't unique. Sites like the Bosnian pyramids, China's ancient pyramids, and Göbekli Tepe all suggest our ancestors built complex structures far earlier than we're taught. Could this be the trace of a lost global civilization, one with advanced technology, mastery of magnetism, and architectural marvels we're only beginning to uncover? Or is it all just a natural coincidence blown wildly out of proportion? When the Cold War escalated, it always pushed to extremes. On January 24, 1978, northern Canada was calm until a Soviet spy satellite fell from the sky, carrying a nuclear reactor. This is the story of Cosmos 954, the satellite that crashed to Earth with enough uranium to ruin both your camping trip and your organs. Cosmos 954 was part of the Soviet Rorsat program, ocean reconnaissance satellites powered by radar. In short, it was surveillance from space, tracking whoever they wanted. To do that, the Soviets equipped the satellite with a powerful radar system and a BES-5 nuclear engine running on 110 pounds of uranium-235. This allowed it to orbit for long periods, like a radioactive stalker circling Earth with plutonium in its veins. The problem was, Rorsat satellites had a habit of falling. Cosmos 954 launched on September 18, 1977. At first, everything seemed fine. It circled Earth every 89.5 minutes, like a nuclear Fitbit. But by December, it started losing control, drifting off course, sending the Soviets into quiet panic. Meanwhile, NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, tracked it with hawk-like focus and radiation detectors. They realized its altitude was dropping fast. The Soviets had no choice but to admit it would crash, and worse, the safety mechanism meant to eject its nuclear core into deep space had completely failed. At 11:53 GMT on January 24th, Cosmos 954 re-entered the atmosphere like a cosmic spear and slammed into the frozen wilderness of northwestern Canada. The disaster spread radioactive debris across 600 miles, from Great Slave Lake to Baker Lake. What followed was Operation Morning Light, the politest nuclear cleanup in history. Canadian and American teams spread out on land and by air, sweeping over 48,000 square miles of icy terrain. Their mission: recover fragments of Cosmos 954 before locals stumbled on souvenirs coated in uranium. The cleanup stretched from January to April 1978, then continued with a second phase from April to October. In the end, they recovered 12 large fragments, 10 of them radioactive. That sounds like success, but in reality, less than 1% of the satellite's nuclear fuel was retrieved. So where's the rest? Still out there, buried under blizzards in Canada's north. Who paid the price for this disaster? The environment surely did. No one knows how much radiation permanently tainted the wilderness. As for money, the Soviets, under the 1972 Space Liability Convention, whoever launches it, owns it, and if it crashes, they pay. Canada sent a bill for $6 million Canadian dollars to cover cleanup and damages. The Soviets complained, negotiated, and ended up paying about half because the Soviet Union was never known for paying its bills in full. In 2014, the internet nearly exploded with a shocking claim. Someone alleged that ancient skulls had been found beneath the ice, their elongated craniums so large they could block an entire road. These clearly non-human heads were supposedly discovered in a place called La'ai by a man named Damien Waters. Don't bother looking for La'ai on an Antarctic map, it doesn't exist. And don't try searching for Damien Waters either, because he has vanished without a trace. Not that he never existed, but every shred of evidence about him has disappeared. Some say that after the skulls were uncovered, powerful forces erased everything: the artifacts, the discoverer, even the location itself. Like many viral stories, this one has layers of mystery. According to rumor, Waters and his team excavated 3 elongated skulls in Antarctica, first hailed as a major archaeological breakthrough. But within days, the headlines shifted into "Aliens have landed." Waters was even quoted after the discovery: "We honestly couldn't believe it. We didn't just find human remains. We found elongated skulls. Every morning I have to pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming." He was clearly thrilled. And who wouldn't be, stumbling upon bleached skulls shaped like extraterrestrials, or at least, appearing that way? The problem is, elongated skulls are not rare. They've been found in Peru, Egypt, and across Africa, but they're not from space. In reality, they come from an ancient practice called cranial deformation, where infants' heads were tightly bound with cloth or wood, so their skulls gradually reshaped. Why do such a seemingly cruel thing? Sometimes for fashion, sometimes as a marker of status. Back to Damien Waters, the Indiana Jones of the internet, with no credentials, no publications, and no trace in any official record. The blog Skeptophilia investigated and reached a blunt conclusion: no Damien Waters in the Smithsonian, no place called La'ai in Antarctica, and no evidence of any skulls ever being discovered. So who made up this story? And how did it spread so widely? Enter Scott C. Waring, a well-known UFO researcher and editor of UFO Sightings Daily. He dismissed skepticism entirely. In one article, Waring argued that the idea of aliens in Antarctica was perfectly plausible. He pointed out that the climate had changed drastically over the past 10,000 years, enough to imagine extraterrestrials once living there. He also noted something suspicious. Elongated skulls had been found in Chile, not far from Antarctica. If such skulls did exist, perhaps they weren't extraterrestrial at all, but the legacy of a lost civilization that once conquered Antarctica before the ice swallowed it whole. Skeptics insist the whole tale is nothing more than a classic internet hoax, a fake story repeated so many times that people forgot it was fiction. And yet, there remains a sliver of hope that one day, one of these bizarre legends might turn out to be true. One day, the truth about Antarctica could finally be revealed. As it turns out, prehistoric Alaska was much cuter than you might imagine. Long before humans brought chaos, the land was home to small, fuzzy, and surprisingly adorable creatures. New evidence shows that ancient Alaska was like a miniature Jurassic Park, complete with its own natural bird garden. Would you buy a season pass to visit? Thanks to fossil digs and high-powered microscopes, scientists have uncovered the oldest evidence of birds nesting in the Arctic. Fossilized bones of baby birds from 73 million years ago have been recovered from the ice. These chicks hatched back when T-Rex still roamed, waving its tiny arms that couldn't even scratch an itch. The discovery was made by Lauren Wilson, a PhD candidate at Princeton, who accomplished what most grad students only dream of: rewriting the scientific timeline. Her research, featured on the cover of Science, proved that birds once nested in prehistoric Alaska. It's the first physical evidence that birds lived in the polar regions alongside dinosaurs, helping scientists better understand evolution. Birds are, after all, the closest living relatives of the dinosaurs. Wilson sifted through countless fragments of tiny bones and teeth collected at the Prince Creek Formation in Alaska's North Slope, a paleontological gold mine that preserved the ancestors of chickens in frozen mud. Finding bird bones from the Cretaceous is rare enough, but finding baby bird bones? That had never happened before. Bird bones are hollow and fragile, almost never surviving in the fossil record. The fact that they remained intact after tens of millions of years is nothing short of miraculous. Before this study, the oldest evidence of polar bird nesting was just 47 million years old, long after the asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs. Now, Wilson has pushed that date back at least 25 million years, proving that birds were nesting well before dinosaurs disappeared. These ancient species included diving birds similar to loons, seabirds resembling gulls, and duck-like waterfowl that could blend seamlessly into any modern lake. In Japan's Kansai region, perched on a mountain that seems carved by the gods, rests a mysterious stone weighing 500 tons. Not a television, not a tomb, not an alien USB drive. This is Ishi no Hoden, a massive stone, perfectly cut, inexplicably hovering above a mystical pond that has baffled archaeologists. Locals call it UKI, Ishi, the floating stone. It sits in Takasago, Hyogo Prefecture, meditating like a monk, suspended over water that never dries up, not even in droughts. The entire area radiates an aura of ancient Japanese mysticism. Some even believe the water beneath the stone has healing powers. During the COVID pandemic, people flocked here as though Jesus himself were handing out vaccines. But what is this stone really? Legend says that the gods, Okunanushi and Sukunabikona, were tasked with building a castle on Mount Hodenyama in a single night. But a jealous local deity grew furious, leaving only the solitary stone as a failed spiritual construction site. Fast forward to 97 BCE, when Japan faced a plague that wiped out nearly half its population. In a dream, the gods instructed Emperor Sujin, "Worship us, and the nation will be spared." He built a shrine at Ishi no Hoden, and the plague mysteriously ended. Of course, that's just legend. In reality, no one knows how, when, or by whom the stone was made. It stands 5.5 meters tall, 6.5 meters wide, 7.6 meters deep, weighing 500 tons, 6 times heavier than the largest stones at the Great Pyramid of Giza. The megalith is composed of hyaloclastite, a volcanic rock formed under water or ice 70 million years ago. That makes it both incredibly ancient and volcanic glass-like. In other words, it's basically a giant obsidian television, and somehow, it looks as if it's floating. No chisel cuts, no fragments of equipment. It's as if the stone fell from space. Some extreme theorists even argue it was once an anti-gravity engine. Ridiculous, perhaps, but no one has been able to disprove it. In 2006, 3D scans and geological studies provided no answers. It's as if the stone was crafted with tools humanity has yet to invent. On the windswept mountains of Armenia, one of humanity's earliest group projects began 14,000 years ago. Prehistoric people looked up at the night sky and declared, "Let's draw the universe," and they did exactly that, carving it into stone. Armenia's rock art is among the most extraordinary legacies in the world, and it seems to guard secrets far older than we imagined. These prehistoric sketchbooks are scattered across the Gegum and Vardanus ranges. The volcanic landscapes look like scenes from a fantasy novel. At nearly 1,800 meters above sea level, these peaks offered ancient people a perfect vantage point for stargazing. Have you ever seen the night sky without light pollution? It's like putting on VR goggles for the first time, as if you've fallen backward into a cosmic soup. That's why our ancestors were obsessed with the stars. They saw a sky in its raw form, while we only see a faint LED version today, barely enough to spot the North Star. One day, even the moon may disappear behind smog. From this pristine view, ancient Armenians mapped the heavens. With nothing but the naked eye, they charted the solar system and etched it onto massive stones. Scholars still can't agree on the timeline. Some say the 3rd millennium BCE, others push it back to the 10th millennium BCE. But one thing is certain, Armenia's ancestors studied the sky with absolute devotion. Why? Experts believe this obsession carried deep spiritual meaning. They may have worshipped the heavens, measured time, and predicted harvests, with these petroglyphs, cosmic calendars for survival. The most famous are the carvings at Mount Udasar, dating back around 12,000 BCE. They were etched into dark volcanic stone, left behind by an extinct volcano. The site was first discovered in the early 20th century. More than 100 years later, scientists still cannot decode their meaning, their precise age, or the mysteries of the people who lived there long before civilization was recorded. In 1973, archaeologists opened one of the world's most infamous cursed tombs, the burial place of Polish King Casimir IV Jagiellon in Kraków. Soon after the excavation, several members of the team died. The media instantly compared the tragedy to the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb 50 years earlier. when many of Howard Carter's team died under mysterious circumstances. But unlike the Egyptian pharaoh, Casimir's tomb had been sealed for only 500 years, not millennia. When the excavation began, archaeologists feared it had already been looted by Russian forces during World War II, as many Polish royal tombs had been. Casimir IV was buried in Wawel Castle's chapel after his death in 1492. When the tomb was opened, instead of treasure, they uncovered a curse. Within days, 4 members of the 12-person excavation team died from infections and strokes. Over the following years, at least 15 others who had direct contact with the tomb also passed away. Long before Hogwarts and long before Stonehenge became a solstice check-in spot, ancient Britain had its own mystical class, the Druids. They were prophets, scientists, warriors, philosophers, and festival organizers for the gods. According to legend, they could even cast spells that left their enemies unable to urinate. So yes, you never wanted to cross a druid. Welcome to the mysterious world of druidry, an ancient religion wrapped in prehistoric mist, where the stars held secrets and red-cloaked warriors shattered skulls in the name of sacred order. Let's be clear, druids weren't just old men with long beards chanting in the woods. They were the intellectual elite of Celtic society: priests, judges, healers, astronomers, and when needed, a real magical threat. Take Figal, for instance. A druid said to have cursed his enemies by sealing their bladders. No swords required, just urinary revenge. Still, the popular image of druids today isn't far off. The word druid itself comes from the Celtic root meaning oak. In Celtic tradition, the oak symbolized knowledge and endurance. Druids were scholars tied to nature, just as Dungeons & Dragons portrays them. But druidry was more than ritual. It had hierarchy. At the top stood the archdruid, clad in gold, believed to shine with celestial wisdom. Below him were white-robed priests who led ceremonies. Then came the sacrificers in red, both warriors and spiritual enforcers. Beneath them were bards, the poets and artists in blue. At the bottom were apprentices in brown, doing the heavy lifting. Training to become a druid took 20 years, and all was memorized. No scriptures, rarely any writing. Every secret passed by word of mouth from one generation to the next. That's why historians today know so little. Little, but not nothing. Druids believed in polytheism, worshipping gods tied to nature: the sun, the moon, rivers, forests, fertility, and death. They also believed in reincarnation, where sins of past lives could be repaid in the next. Life wasn't linear, it was a cycle of death and rebirth. Mention druids, and you probably picture Stonehenge, right? Robed figures chanting at sunrise on the summer solstice. But in truth, Stonehenge predates the druids by centuries. Built around 2500 BCE, likely for astronomy or rituals, its true builders remain unknown. The Druids came later and adopted it as their holy ground. They weren't its architects, but they knew how to turn it into a solstice stage. And then came their downfall. The culprit? Rome. Julius Caesar wrote about them around 59 BCE, describing Druids as wise and powerful, but also as practitioners of human sacrifice. For the Romans, the Druids were too independent, too influential, too mystical. In the 1st century CE, Emperor Tiberius banned Druidry, blaming them for wild rites and rebellion. Decline came swiftly. Whether crushed by Rome, by plague, or by conversion to Christianity, Druidry eventually faded into legend. Something massive wriggled up from the icy waters of Antarctica, and it looked nothing short of alien. In fact, it was stranger than usual. If you zoom in on Google Earth over a desolate patch at the edge of Antarctica, you'll see it. A boat drifts quietly near a barren island. Harmless enough, right? But look again. Right next to that boat, as if it photobombed the scene, looms a bizarre figure straight out of SpongeBob's nightmares. So what exactly is this thing? It appears like a giant pale worm studded with teeth. Like a sinister pool float, possessed by the spirit of a prehistoric predator. You half expect it to rear up, lift its head, and hiss like a serpent. The image, pulled from Google Earth's archives, exploded across the internet. Some insist it's a hoax, others whisper about a new species, and a few simply wonder why Antarctica suddenly looks like it's auditioning for the next Tremors movie. To be fair, the picture raises more questions than answers. The boat seems to be carrying scientists, perhaps busy with research when their uninvited guest appeared. But to this day, there's been no confirmation from anyone on board. No names, no notes, no frantic press release admitting they accidentally summoned Cthulhu. Skeptics argue it's just clever Photoshop, which is entirely possible. Others say it's a camera glitch or a strange shadow. But the most exciting theory suggests it's a never-before-seen creature, rising from the dark trenches of the Southern Ocean. A flesh and blood kraken. Because let's be honest, the deep sea has always been a horror film humanity hasn't finished watching. The Mariana Trench already holds creatures that look like they were sketched during a chemical hallucination. Antarctica is the final frontier for such oddities. Cold, secretive, and nearly untouched. If there is a place on Earth capable of spawning a beast big enough to swallow a submarine, this is it. Even so, believers admit the creature looks a little cartoonish, too perfect, almost begging to become a meme. One YouTuber quipped that the ocean just got tired of being ignored and decided to cosplay as a legendary demon. So, what do you think? Myth, monster, or marketing stunt? Deep inside a frozen cave in Germany, an Ice Age artist carved a being no one had ever seen before, a lion walking upright like a human, or perhaps a human with the head of a lion. Either way, it was a bold act of imagination. It may well have been the first god. It is even older than the ritual turtle altar from the Israeli cave I mentioned earlier. Scientists call it the Lion Man. It is the oldest confirmed symbol of religious belief ever unearthed. Discovered in 1939 in the Hohenstein-Stadel cave of Germany, this 12-inch figure was carved from mammoth ivory 40,000 years ago. It fuses human and animal into a dramatic hybrid that archaeologists classify as a therianthrope, a mythical being part human, part beast. How long would it take to carve something so small? According to research at the British Museum, reproducing the Lion Man with Stone Age flint tools would require about 400 hours. That is weeks of painstaking labor in a frigid Ice Age cave. Clearly, the ancient sculptor was deeply devoted to this creation. But what did it mean? How do we know it was religious? Maybe it was just a toy, yet most researchers believe it held ceremonial power, sacred and communal, like a relic passed from hand to hand. Wear on its surface suggests it was shared, not hidden away on some prehistoric bookshelf. The cave itself offered more ritual traces: drilled Arctic fox teeth, reindeer antlers, all tied to spiritual practice. The Lion Man may be the earliest proof that humans believed in forces beyond the natural world, a god, a spirit, a guardian, or something stranger still. As archaeologist Adam Brum of Griffith University once said, "This is evidence of the ability to imagine a supernatural being. And isn't that what separates us from animals? Dogs have no gods. Caterpillars don't worship an almighty being. Only humans imagine what does not exist before their eyes. You cannot see it. And once humans imagined gods, they never stopped believing." But here's the twist. For decades, the Lion Man was celebrated as the world's oldest deity or mythological figure. Yet new discoveries in Indonesia suggest religion is even older. The Lion Man remains the oldest three-dimensional representation of faith, but cave paintings there, dated to 51,200 years ago, depict another therianthrope, another god, half human, half beast. This may mark the true beginning of religion. No one knows whether it started in Indonesia, Africa, Germany, or beneath the sea. But evidence shows that about 50,000 years ago, the human brain took a leap, allowing us to create faith. That was the birth of belief. Why though? What lit the spark across continents at once, so gods emerged in Australia, Asia, Africa, and Europe? It is almost as if some being whispered to our ancestors, "Believe in me, and you will prosper." You've never seen rock art like this. Where the Caucasus Mountains meet the Caspian Sea, ancient people carved a secret open-air museum straight into the stone. Welcome to Gobustan, Azerbaijan, a timeless wonder that leaves visitors speechless. The Gobustan National Reserve is more than a historic site. It is a living gallery of expression, spirituality, survival, and perhaps even interstellar communication. There are over 6,000 petroglyphs here, like prehistoric tweets that never got deleted. How old are they? 2,000 years? Try 40,000. These engravings were made when humans still shared the world with Neanderthals, just after the Ice Age had loosened its grip. The images show hunts, fertility rituals, even what looks like boats powered by the sun, a mystery mainstream science can barely explain. First uncovered in the 1930s, Gobustan's carvings are records of life and maybe attempts to impress neighboring tribes. But the details get murky. That solar boat is a red flag, because history tells us humans of 40,000 years ago couldn't build ships. If so, is this proof of some cosmic Uber service? Or has our history been wrong all along? Another puzzle. Religion was not supposed to exist 40 millennia ago. Yet, in the Mother Cave, archaeologists found signs of goddess worship, countless female carvings linked to fertility rites. Clearly, these people were far from primitive. They had religion, tools, and perhaps even sailing. In the Bull Cave, two goats lock horns, maybe the earliest fight club ever recorded. Gobustan's rock art holds a treasure of forgotten knowledge, hinting at a global civilization with roots stretching back to the Neanderthals. They had a plan. But so did the mountain, and the mountain always wins. High above the snowline, in the frozen heart of the Swiss Alps, 6 hikers set out from Zermatt on what should have been a daring but survivable adventure. They were experienced, close-knit, 5 of them from the same family. But they were not ready. Not for what awaited them. As the group neared Tête Blanche, a jagged summit rising 11,400 feet, the mountain struck back. Winds screamed at 70 miles per hour, tearing clothes like blades. Temperatures plunged to -22 Fahrenheit with wind chill, freezing breath in the air. Then, amid the blizzard and screams, the group vanished. They had stepped into a white death trap. Rescue Commander Anjan Truffer of Air Zermatt recalled what his team found the next day. 2 bodies lay still in the snow, hypothermia already sealing their fate. A few steps away, others were buried, located only by transceivers and snow probes. One lay alone 100 feet off, perhaps desperate for shelter, but it was too late. Truffer noted the group had tried to dig an igloo, a clever idea in theory, but their shovels were too fragile, like trying to cut frozen ice cream with a plastic spoon. Panic may have set in, scattering the group, and once scattered at that altitude, in howling winds and blinding snow, there was no coming back together. Guide Klaus Oftenblatten bluntly said the group was gravely unprepared. The storm was forecast, authorities knew it was coming, but blinded by optimism, they pressed on a decision that cost 5 lives. The emergency call came at 5:19 p.m. on March 9th. Rescuers rushed into the storm, but nature forbade it. 0 visibility, avalanche risk sky high, winds fierce enough to kill an entire team within minutes. Helicopters grounded, ground crews forced back. Police Chief Christian Varone said simply, "Impossible." Not until 9:20 p.m. the following night did helicopters reach the site. They found 5 of the 6. The last was never recovered. The tragedy shook the town of Vex, where 300 mourners gathered for a candlelit vigil against the same cold that claimed their loved ones. This was not the first time Tête Blanche became a graveyard. 5 years earlier, 7 skiers died under the same brutal conditions, the same peak, the same path, the same merciless weather. And yet the Alps still call, for glory, for risk, for the fatal allure of the mountain. Would you dare walk into a blizzard? Forget ice, penguins, and endless white. Antarctica was once a unique Jurassic Park, and it was ruled by a terrifying creature that made the T-Rex look like a weakling. This apex predator was named Antarctanax shackletoni, in honor of the legendary explorer Ernest Shackleton. And while calling it a king might sound exaggerated, it truly was a fearsome beast. In reality, its size was only that of a salamander. But don't be fooled. This little creature carried fierce evolutionary power. According to researcher Brandon Peacock from the Field Museum in Chicago, the animal belonged to the group Archosaur, distant relatives of dinosaurs and crocodiles. The menu of this cold-blooded king 250 million years ago, likely amphibians, insects, and primitive mammals. Anything that moved and wasn't fast enough to escape. This tiny creature lived in a post-apocalyptic paradise, only 2 million years after the Permian extinction event, when 90% of life on Earth had been wiped out. Scientists believe it was the most devastating extinction in the planet's history. 2 million years later, the king of Antarctica became the ruler. Even though it was no bigger than a lizard, it was still stronger and fiercer than anything around it. Antarctica wasn't always a frozen desert. It was once a giant incubator of strange and rapid evolutionary change, a cradle for creatures that reshaped Earth's ecosystems for millions of years. Antarctica was once lush, thriving, and full of predators, and for a brief time, it belonged to a lizard king. A structure has been discovered in Japan so strange that many claim humans could not have built it. Welcome to the Oya Quarry in Tochigi Prefecture. This is a colossal stone monster, a massive monument that defies logic, reason, and perhaps even the laws of physics. It is not just a hole in the ground, but an underground labyrinth of caverns, vast enough to swallow an entire stadium. Thousands of square meters were carved straight into volcanic rock. But the mystery lies here. It has existed for tens of thousands of years, created at a time when humans were still fumbling with fire and sharp sticks. How could ancient people, with no bulldozers, no machinery, and certainly no lasers, have built something that modern engineers would struggle to replicate? It makes little sense to say Stone Age humans achieved this. Perhaps they weren't the first. Maybe the Oya Quarry was the work of a far older and far more advanced civilization, one that came before modern humans. The ancient builders created massive symmetrical halls, perfectly cut walls, and vast stone chambers that seemed to echo with long-forgotten secrets. This was not the work of a handful of sweaty farmers with chisels. It looks like the design of a civilization capable of constructing underground cities that would astonish today's miners. The star of this mystery is Oya stone itself. When first quarried, the stone is soft and easy to shape, but once exposed to air, it hardens like concrete. Oya stone was highly prized by emperors, architects, and temple builders, especially during the Heian period, from the year 794 to the year 1185. Many experts believe the royal family directly sponsored the quarry to gain unlimited access to this precious stone. Other researchers suspect the royals were merely continuing work begun by an even older people. The quarry may even predate the legends of great floods that appear across cultures worldwide, including in the Bible. Because even today, with all our modern technology, engineers say recreating the scale and precision of Oya is nearly impossible. Some of the giant stone pillars look almost like three-dimensional prints left by time travelers. The walls are cut so flat they appear laser-carved. The twisted, interlinked chambers could have come straight out of a surreal Escher painting. In other words, the Oya quarry seems impossible, unless the ancestors of ancient Japan possessed superhuman strength. But if not, who was the true builder of this structure? Prehistoric stonemasons? A lost civilization? Or visitors from somewhere very far away? No one knows for sure. Yet anyone can explore it today. The Oya History Museum is now a preserved section of the quarry. You enter through a small doorway at the base of a hill, and as you descend a spiral staircase, a hidden world suddenly opens up 30 meters below the surface. Echoing stone corridors and towering walls make it feel less like a museum and more like the secret base of an ancient civilization that never wanted to be found. Inside are tools, artifacts, and remnants proving humans have quarried this mystical stone for ages and at great depth. And yet, even with evidence displayed in glass cases, larger questions still loom greater and more mysterious than the giant stone walls of Oya itself. Let's step away from Homo sapiens and talk about another human species, Homo floresiensis, also known as the real-life hobbit. Once upon a time, not in Middle-earth, but on a small island called Flores in Indonesia, there lived humans barely 90 centimeters tall, with brains the size of a grapefruit. But despite their tiny bodies and little heads, these hobbits had a toolkit that could put some modern campers to shame. This discovery in 2003 became an evolutionary riddle, wrapped in mystery, stuffed inside a coconut shell. Scientists are still puzzled by how such a tiny human species, only 3 feet tall, could have come to be. When archaeologist Mark Morwood and his team unearthed a complete skeleton in a cave in 2003, they were stunned. Was it a deformed Homo sapiens, a shriveled ancestor, or a perfectly adapted miniature human? A new study published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B has revealed a clue. Scientists believe the island itself created this hobbit. It all comes down to island dwarfism. And honestly, the story of how this human species emerged is more dramatic than the novel The Hobbit. Yuka Kaifu's team used 3D CT scans on an 18,000-year-old Homo floresiensis skull. They calculated a brain volume of 426 cubic centimeters. That's slightly bigger than earlier estimates, but still far smaller than modern humans, even smaller than Homo erectus. But brain size doesn't equal intelligence. Look at the mighty T-Rex huge and a mouse tiny, but that doesn't make the mouse dumber. Some scientists argue the hobbit's small brain was simply a reflection of its small body, meaning it could have been just as smart as us. The fact they were found on an island is key. You may not know this, but island creatures often evolve in strange ways. Some shrink to survive on limited resources, like adorable pygmy elephants. Others grow into nightmares, like Komodo dragons. Homo floresiensis may be the perfect case of island dwarfism. But how did they end up trapped on Flores? Most likely the same way pygmy elephants did. Their larger ancestors drifted there. Scientists believe Homo erectus, the travel-loving ancestor, reached Flores. Once isolated, with limited food and resources, natural selection hit the shrink button. Over many generations, the descendants of Homo erectus got smaller. Bodies shrank, brains shrank, but intelligence remained. Kaifu explains that modern animals show this process can happen fast, just a few thousand years. Look at Scandinavians unusually tall, or America's obesity rates in only 50 years. An entire population's body shape shifted. Physical changes don't take long when the environment pushes hard. But with the hobbits, questions remain. Who did they evolve from? Why did they vanish? Scientists believe hobbits survived on Flores until around 17,000 years ago. Yet locals still whisper that they're out there, hiding in the forests, tiny cousins of Bigfoot. History may be about to be rewritten, and the starting point lies in the world's oldest language. Long before humans carved gods into stone or royal decrees into clay, something extraordinary happened in the misty valleys of southeastern Europe. You've probably heard that Sumerian cuneiform is the oldest writing system ever found, but that might not be true. 7,500 years ago, along the Danube River, a civilization appeared that was far ahead of its time. While much of the world still stumbled in the shadows of the Stone Age, here people seem to use a language older than cuneiform itself. At least, that's what scientists believe. And if true, everything we know about the origin of writing, language, and human civilization needs a reset more powerful than your grandma's old computer. The culture believed to have created this prehistoric writing system is simply called the Danube civilization. They knew how to craft copper tools. They built two-story homes like ancient apartment blocks. They even made handcrafted chairs that look like something out of a modern DIY show. They spun thread, wove textiles, tanned leather, made pottery, and invented the wheel. Yes, the wheel, the mysterious circle that even Mesopotamians hadn't thought of. The Sumerians achieved much and developed many systems, but they never mastered the wheel. Today, scientists suspect that an unknown genius in what is now Romania came up with the idea. It isn't confirmed 100%, but evidence keeps piling up. The most striking feature of the Danube civilization is their mysterious language. Among countless artifacts, archaeologists found thousands of intricate symbols. There are so many that some experts believe this was the world's first writing system. What does that mean? It means the cradle of civilization might not be Mesopotamia, nor Africa, but the Balkans. The pioneer of this research was Harold Harmon, a linguist who whispers to ancient scripts, and the deputy director of the Institute of Archaeological Mythology. Harmon studied these symbols called the Vinča script and uncovered meaning. According to him, they appeared across a wide region, from northern Greece to Slovakia, supporting the theory that they once belonged to a civilization of global influence. Of course, skeptics pushed back. Most Mesopotamian scholars rejected the idea. Some argued the symbols were just decorations. Others insisted they came from Mesopotamia. But that's awkward when many Danube artifacts are older than Mesopotamian ones. Here's a little-known fact. The Vinča script contains more than 700 unique symbols, nearly the same number as Egyptian hieroglyphs. Is this coincidence, or did Egypt once borrow from this ancient prototype? Before empires rose and fell, one metal ruled them all: tin. 3,000 years before the English drank tea and the Egyptians built libraries, tin was treasure. Today we see it as ordinary, but in the ancient world, tin was power. I've said before that the ancient world was more connected than we imagine. Now you'll see proof in a prehistoric global economy fueled by tin. In Cornwall, England, miners crawled through damp tunnels to extract blocks of tin. Then they sold it to Sardinian sailors, who carried it across the seas to Egypt's pharaohs. They may not have realized it, but looking back, it's clear they had created the world's first international trade network by the 13th century BC. The English supplied tin, but it was the Nuragic civilization of Sardinia that became the hub of the entire operation. This mysterious culture is known for more than 10,000 stone structures scattered across the island. They were master builders of megaliths in the ancient world. Yet their religion, politics, and origins remain a mystery. The only certainty, they loved bronze, and they were the first to master it. Bronze is made of copper and tin. Sardinia had plenty of copper, but no tin. Tin had to come from faraway Cornwall. Thanks to that, a rocky peninsula at the edge of England became the gold mine that fueled the Bronze Age economy. Research shows Cornwall tin reached Israel and Turkey 3,300 years ago. Shipwrecks off Devon even revealed true international shipping. Cornwall tin, alongside Sardinian artifacts, Spanish goods, and Danish amber, put all the evidence together, and it's clear Sardinians were logistical geniuses, running a trade service across Europe. Materials from Scandinavia, England, and Iberia flowed into Sardinia, then spread to Cyprus, Crete, the Near East, and beyond. They were the FedEx of the Bronze Age, but instead of tracking numbers and porch pirates, they had horn-helmeted warriors and fearsome ships. Today, thousands of Nuragic towers still stand across Sardinia, stone ghosts of a civilization that once defined Bronze Age globalization. Yet, they get only a passing mention in textbooks. Thanks to the efforts of archaeologists from Durham, Gothenburg, Cagliari, Freiburg, and beyond, the Nuragic mystery is finally coming into focus. According to Dr. Sabatini, an expert in Bronze Age trade networks, this isn't just Sardinia's story, but Europe's story, with Cornish miners, Danish merchants, and Sardinian shipwrights. The lingering question, how long had these distant civilizations known about each other? Pretty amazing, isn't it? A strange skeleton found in a pit in Germany may change the entire history of humankind. It belonged to an ancient ancestor, possibly the very missing link between humans and apes. This tiny creature lived about 47 million years ago. It looked like a monkey with a long tail, short arms, an opposable thumb, and forward-facing eyes. Except for the tail, which was unusually long, its appearance was strikingly close to that of a human. What fascinated scientists most was that, according to a team led by Professor Jørn Hurum, a Norwegian fossil expert, the creature seemed to be caught in the middle of transformation. It still had a tail and some monkey-like traits, but it lacked several key features that all other primates of its era possessed. It had no claws for grooming. It also lacked the special lower teeth formation, known as the tooth comb, intending the crest the rhytal. This suggested it was among the earliest examples of a primate breaking away from its branch to become more human-like. In other words, this fossil was a snapshot of evolution in motion. The skeleton was given the name Ida, opening a window into a time when the world itself was changing. Dinosaurs had only recently vanished. The Himalayas were just beginning to rise as mountains, and bizarre mammals roamed jungles once again. Ida was one of those remarkable creatures. If scientists can uncover more fossils like Ida, we may be able to trace the entire story of human evolution and rewrite history forever. It sounds mysterious, doesn't it? Yet the largest megalith in Europe is hiding in plain sight. In the sun-drenched hills of southern Spain lies a colossal stone so massive it makes Stonehenge look like a pile of pebbles. It is called the Dolmen of Menga, and many researchers believe it may be the largest megalith in all of Europe. The Dolmen of Menga is a burial monument from the Copper Age, more than 5,500 years old. Dolmen means a stone tomb shaped like a gate, a type common across ancient Europe and Asia, but never on this scale. This structure stretches 87 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 11 feet high. It consists of 32 massive stones with a combined weight of nearly 200 tons. It was erected around 3800 BC by people who had never even heard of the wheel. Somehow, prehistoric geniuses managed to quarry enormous slabs of sedimentary rock, haul them across wild terrain, and raise them into a structure so durable that it still stands today. Not impressed yet? Then consider this. The entrance of the dolmen aligns perfectly with the sunrise on the summer solstice, catching the first rays of light in what may be the oldest light show on Earth. Impressive enough? Good. Now to the skeletons. When archaeologists opened the dolmen in the 19th century, they discovered hundreds of human remains inside. No gold, no jewels, only bodies. This was not the tomb of a single king. It was a communal monument, a place where ancestors were laid to rest in a carefully calculated celestial chamber. The Dolmen of Menga was built as a gateway between the living, the dead, and the stars. And it was not alone. The Antequera Dolmen complex in Spain includes two others, Viera and El Romeral, each as mysterious as Menga. Despite centuries of study, Menga's secrets remain unsolved. Researchers can date the stones, they can speculate about rituals, but the truth is, no one knows for certain. Some believe dolmens were originally used by prehistoric giants to bury their leaders, only later reused by ancient humans. Scientists may have uncovered the most terrifying natural disaster humanity has ever faced. It was a massive volcanic eruption in the Mediterranean about 3,600 years ago, an event that may have directly contributed to the collapse of the Minoan civilization on the Greek island of Santorini, the very culture many believe inspired the legend of Atlantis. Historians had long suspected that a natural disaster wiped out the Minoans, but new evidence reveals the destruction was far greater than once believed. The eruption unleashed a colossal tsunami, one unlike anything humanity has witnessed since that obliterated coastal communities across the Mediterranean. In Turkey, archaeologists found clear evidence, a human skeleton buried beneath a chaotic layer of earth and debris left by the wave. The site was also blanketed in a strange layer of ash, puzzling researchers until they realized it had drifted hundreds of miles from Greece. Piecing the evidence together, they concluded the tsunami was so violent, it destroyed settlements on the western coast of Turkey, killing the man whose remains were found and burying him for nearly 4,000 years.